Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. We're doing this show live from our backstage at Consensus CoinDesk in Toronto. Blockspace is running a stage this year, which is pretty fun for both of us at Consensus. And we're recording this, on the fly, on the go, but Bitcoin mining news doesn't stop. And so that's why we got to do it this morning, Colin.
Yep, we're gearing up for a big day of content on the mining stage. We got a lot of fun panels planned, some fireside chats, some presentations. So unfortunately, this will be happening already when Consensus is done. I would say tune into it live, but you can't do that because that's already over.
It's true. You probably missed it already. But there's a recording online. So a lot of good sessions that Colin programmed over the last year. Shout out to Consensus and CoinDesk for making that possible. We are going to jump to a break for our sponsor, and then we'll be right back with a difficulty roundup with hash rate index.
Today's show is brought to you by Fractal Bitcoin, but we'll learn more about them later in the show. For now, let's get right into it.
Okay, we're back. Let's talk about hash rate and what's been happening in the last week or so. We don't have Matt Kimmel, our difficulty weatherman, with us, but we do have Colin Harper, who is, a pretty good stand-in.
We have AirSats, difficulty weatherman. Yeah, so looking at hash rate index, Bitcoin's hash rate has been taking another dip. It is down to 867 exahashes a second. It's been really kind of chopping up and down in this trend between like 920 exahashes and about 850 for the last month or so. A lot of fluctuation, a lot of oscillation in Bitcoin's hash rate. And as a result, miners will not be seeing as large of a difficulty increase as they would have if we were measuring by block times about a week ago. We're 86% through the current difficulty epoch. It looks like they've got about a 2.6% adjustment coming. So that'll take a hit to hash price. Right now it's at about $55 per hash per day. You'll see that drop a couple of dollars. All things considered, not terrible. I think a lot of people probably figured we'd be a lot higher in the hash rate, sphere currently than we are. But whether it's tariffs or whether it's, hash rate coming offline for a number of reasons around the world, not as much as we would have expected.
Well, when's the last time we've been over $50 per petahash? I think that's the most notable thing to me that I've been looking at. And for people who are tuning in, maybe don't know that on CoinDesk, when we talk about hash price, we basically are measuring mining revenue. So how much can you make as a miner when you're mining every day? And it's been since...
So to your point, we popped above $50 per petahash per day for the first time since March.
Nice.
So, not too long.
And over 55 the first time since mid-February almost.
Yeah.
So things are looking up for Bitcoin miners a little bit in terms of hash price, but that's coming at the cost, obviously, of other miners turning offline.
Yeah, 100%. I wonder if that's part of the reason why we've seen some sluggish growth for hash rate, but it hit a local low about $39 per petahash per day, which is not too far from the all-time low, which I believe is about like 36 or 37. Directly following the halving. And it's just been in a steady recovery after a pretty sizable negative difficulty adjustment an epoch or so ago, and also with Bitcoin rallying above 100K. So
100%.
Not as dicey as it has been, but still not great. Still a little bit of slim pickings out there.
Well, you know what? Let's go to a story of abundance. We're going to go to the story of American Bitcoin in a merger that was announced Monday with Gryphon Digital. Colin, take it away.
Yeah, so the Trump family linked American Bitcoin, which is a subsidiary of Hut 8. We covered this at Blockspace. They came out of the woodwork at the end of March with this partnership that really kind of took everyone by surprise. I don't think very many people, except for those really close to the matter, were expecting this. So American Bitcoin was co-founded by the Trump brothers, or rather Eric Trump, and it was originally American Data Center, Inc., which was, I believe, started by this company called Homari Holdings. And the Trump brothers are investors and are sitting on the board of it. But now American Bitcoin has aspirations to go public. They're doing a reverse merger with Gryphon Digital. And as a result of this merger, they want to list on the NASDAQ. The transaction could close as early as Q3 2025. And after the merger, American Bitcoin stockholders will hold 98% of the new company to Gryphon Digital's 2%. And a few just other stats. Currently, American Bitcoin has 10 exahashes allocated to it from Hut 8. Hut 8 has an 80% stake in the company, so they essentially swapped their self-mining hash rate for that stake, aligning themselves with the Trump name. I think the play here, obviously, they want two of their brands public, but also if you are leagued with a Trump, you might have access to capital lines that you would otherwise not have access to. And the other big play here for HUD 8, they are dividing their business interests between American Bitcoin and between their parent brand. And HUD 8 will focus on energy and infrastructure, while American Bitcoin will tackle all things mining. That may help them raise capital or lower the cost of capital for investors who want to see just an infrastructure play business rather than something riskier like Bitcoin mining.
I think one of the stories here too to watch is Gryphon Digital's performance in the stock market. So as of Monday, if you were holding this, it popped really hard. It went up almost to $3, and it was trading around 30 cents. And then since then, it's sold off and it's back to like about 75 cents as of recording. So it's still up almost 100% on the week. However, I think for a lot of people who were interested in Bitcoin mining stocks, this was a nice one to hold because of the merger announcement. Obviously, had large implications for the Gryphon Digital stock, which was languishing. They were actually on a delisting notice from NASDAQ because they've been trading under $1 for quite a while. And I think now that they've kind of reset that, they're fine for a little bit, even though they're still back under $1. But to me, what this says is like, hey, there's another Bitcoin miner on the block. This is another contender for dollars from investors, especially from those retail investors who might be more interested in something like this. I think it's a while before we see any sort of institutional buyers into something like American Bitcoin, though perhaps that might be something you talk about on stage today, shoring up that institutional bid for a new Bitcoin mining brand. Now, when we talk about the institutional bid, like Colin, you've done a nice piece on this on Blockspace recently, it's making up the supermajority of the holders of these stocks now. Like retail is a big part of it, but it's less important than ever as big groups are coming in and purchasing a lot of these Bitcoin mining companies like IREN, CleanSpark, Mara, Riot, but it's typically just those guys. I have Core Scientific, I think, should throw in there as well, just as names off the top of the dome. For American Bitcoin, any thoughts on how that could change coming to this year? Like, how do they shore up a new investor base in what is a completely new face, new company, new management team, new strategy?
I think it'll be pretty easy with Eric Trump on board. I think that that's going to draw a lot of new capital. And there are going to be people who are interested in this company solely from that alone. And there are going to be people who were otherwise skittish about Bitcoin mining who might feel a little less skittish now that a member of the Trump family is sitting on this company's C-suites. Eric Trump is the chief strategy officer of American Bitcoin. And one last note for this. I mean, what a comeback story for Gryphon Digital. You know, famously of, or infamously of new miner fame from the last cycle, there was a purchase order that they advertised when they were leagued with Sphere 3D, and essentially that miner was completely fraudulent, and they signed multi-million-dollar deal for it. But they have since changed their entire company structure. They've cycled out old. It became a shell company.
You know? It became like the Rob Chang, who was a CEO, left recently, and then Gryphon brought in new management. It was unclear what the play was, but here was the play. You know, just get picked up. I'm sure the executives get some sort of payout for being in the chair now. They're going to be out. And we have Matt Prusak as the new CEO of American Bitcoin, which we did a podcast with him recently. So,
miners, are you ready to earn more with what you already have? That's what Fractal Bitcoin is for, scaling Bitcoin with Bitcoin using a fully compatible recursive design. In just 7 months, Fractal's hit 18 million users and nearly 2 billion transactions. Fractal's cadence mining reduces up to 50% of your pool fee. No new hardware, no extra energy, and it's easy. FB rewards go straight to your existing Bitcoin wallet address. Over 90% of Bitcoin's hash power is already merge mining Fractal. Get more from the same resources. Start on Fractal today.
This is as of this morning. We're recording at 9:30 Thursday, ET. IREN putting out a notice that they have $100 million potential cost on importation of new units. So unfortunately, IREN became a victim of the Trump tariff swinging back and forth, and they made a purchase order that landed in the United States around the same time the Trump tariffs with China were extremely high, and so it's clocking at $100 million. Now, they are disputing this with the Customs Border Patrol Agency. Customs and Border Protections Agency,
There
right?
you go.
I always mess it up. Colin always corrects me, which is why you have an EIC. And this story, I think, is just big implications for hash cost for them if IREN has to stomach this bill, which again, they're disputing, then that's going to really hurt their hash costs. We just got their numbers actually for Q1, and they have one of the leading hash costs for any miner out there, mostly because they have very cheap energy and they have one of the lowest joules per terahash for
like
their fleet across the board.
15 joule per terahash is like all S21s. This is really interesting because it's another story filed as a ding in a way against the Customs and Border Protection Agency. So they are claiming that the country of origin for these miners is China and that IREN skirted tariffs accordingly. There should have been 25%. But IREN is disputing that, saying that they were actually not purchased in China. And I would be pretty surprised if they were, unless Bitmain put one over on them, because miners know about these tariffs and most of the manufacturing is done in Malaysia, Indonesia, or Thailand, and they import from there accordingly. Also, I don't know if you can even order direct from China.
So I think where it comes from is the tariff can have two parts, right? Where it's like, not only does it have to be assembled not in China or a certain country, but the parts themselves cannot be brought from China.
Yeah,
and so
I see.
sometimes that's how they get you.
That makes sense.
It can be a tariff on the secondary unit. So we just did a show with Scott Johnson of Digital Shovel, and we talked a lot about tariffs because their fabrication shop is actually here in Toronto. And we discussed the tariff bit quite a lot, and we'll be putting that out next week on Tuesday. And what he said is a lot of times they'll try to source as much as possible, like the steel, the different electrical parts in Canada or North America in general. Actually, they try to source from America if they're shipping to America, because then you don't have to pay the extra tariff. But if you're getting steel from Canada or you're getting steel from the EU or somewhere else, then you're going to have to pay a pass-through tariff on the underlying product. So they get you both ways. I mean, the government knows how to charge taxes.
Yeah, they like to extract the king's fare.
They do. So we'll be watching that IREN one. I mean, there's not much more there yet because they're disputing it. They've actually not even put it into their numbers for the quarter. They just kind of put it as a footnote, but definitely a story to watch because that's 100 million's hairy. That's really bad.
Don't blame them. And also, it's not a cost that they've incurred yet. So it makes sense that they would just put it as a footnote, but definitely something to look out for.
I'm actually trying to remember off the top of my head what their Q1 income was. And I mean, I think a big order like that starts to wipe you out. Penny Ether had a good thread on that. But we can jump over to the next story anyways, which is Bitdeer ramping up its realized hash rate by 67% with deployment of its Sealminer units. Bitdeer, of course, is deploying its own ASIC in-house to compete with the Bitmain monopoly. And then, of course, Bitdeer is co-founded and run by Jihan Wu, who was the former co-founder and CEO of Bitmain. Colin, any thoughts on this one? Like, that's a huge deployment of hash rate in 1 month.
Sealminers are online. That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
So they have deployed 3.7 exahashes worth of their A1, which is the first series of the Sealminers in April, and then another half an exahash of Sealminer A2s at facilities in Texas and Norway. So the interesting play here, as you mentioned, Will, they're obviously a multi-faceted Bitcoin mining company. They've got their ASIC mining manufacturing line. They've got hosted services, cloud services, and self-mining hash rate. Their cloud services have really waned as hash price has been compressed because that's just not an attractive market anymore for a lot of people. But they are allocating the majority of their Sealminer manufacturing to themselves. They're selling some to other miners, but I believe it's in the ballpark of 2/3 or something like that will be going to their actual deployments in Texas, Norway, and elsewhere around the world. And as Brandon Bailey of Second Gate has written for us, this was a while ago, actually. I think it was September of last year.
Nuts, isn't it?
If you read Blockspace, you might get some alpha.
You had a good bid because that stock has been doing pretty good. I mean, it's up 18% on the week.
Yeah, and Brandon wrote about it when it was, I believe, like definitely sub 10, maybe around 5. But anyway, he was talking about the value accrual of having that ASIC manufacturing line in-house because it significantly lowers your cost to procure hash rate. So we should expect to see from Bitdeer, from those lower CapEx costs, their profit margins begin to rise as they start deploying some of these Sealminers.
I mean, I think from a stock market perspective, which not giving any price predictions at all. It's been a good one to follow just because you can see the vertical integration argument come together where they have the power pipeline. They have something like 2 gigawatts of power in their pipeline. No, a lot of people say that, but you can see this actually happening with them. They had the recent Alberta power plant they purchased. They have lots of deployments in Bhutan, Scandinavia, Texas, etc., Ohio. Yeah, I'm just actually thinking about that now. The Ohio story, we haven't got an update on that in a second, where they pause Bitcoin mining expansion at their Ohio site because they're looking at AI HPC. But that's neither here nor there. You can see the argument for why vertically integrating really matters for these Bitcoin miners when it comes to Bitdeer, because they're going to control the ASIC with their fab production. They're going to control the power pipeline with how many sites they've already nabbed. And they're going to have this nice fleet to start distributing and self-mining with. So at a lower cost than everybody else. So something to watch. Got 2 more stories for everybody, unless you have anything else on Bitdeer. I don't.
I think is it 2 more or is it 1 more?
There was actually 1 more. Sorry, guys. Only 1. We don't have a cry corner this week.
No, we don't.
Well, should we make up a cry corner right now? We're tired. We're tired of consensus. That's
We're
our
also
cry corner.
tired of griping about things.
We've missed cry corner a little bit. We've been consistent during the year. Okay, last story we're going to finish up on. CleanSpark having an interesting power option, purchase option with Bitcoin going into the second half of the year.
Yeah, so CleanSpark buys miners with Bitcoin in a sign of shifting ASIC market power. That's from our friends at the Miner Mag. Now, Bitcoin miners buying ASIC miners with Bitcoin is not exactly unheard of, but most of them will use cash that they raise maybe from an ATM or something like that. But with this deal, CleanSpark has bought 13,200 Bitcoin miners by transferring 691 Bitcoin, total purchase valued at about 76.6 million. The thing is, though, the Bitcoin were marked to market at 110,900 for the order. And this was in April when Bitcoin was below 100K. So CleanSpark secured pretty good terms for this. And the interesting thing is, too, they have an option to purchase that Bitcoin back from Bitmain at the price paid. So $110,900. And so if Bitcoin rips from here, they can go and just purchase that Bitcoin back for the price that they paid for the miners and, net out the return on that. This is a fascinating purchase.
It's a nice story.
Yeah, it really is, because I've never really seen financial engineering like this from a Bitcoin miner. And the fact that CleanSpark was able to secure those payment terms for that Bitcoin price and also that option, there's something else going on behind here, because Bitmain doesn't usually give that kind of leeway in a deal, right? I don't know if this is a sign that their sales are suffering right now, if the tariffs really are starting to make an impact on the importation business into the US. But I'm curious what gave CleanSpark this amount of negotiating power in this purchase, because it's really kind of unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be curious to hear more from the CleanSpark team on how this kind of deal came about. Maybe we can do a segment with them in the future. But I think for large miners, like, you do have some ability to wiggle on things and kind of push people. This is nice. Like, this is a nice thing that you get with Bitcoin. I'd be curious to know in similar industries, if you do get any sort of financial engineering, obviously not Bitcoin, but probably in USD. The only thing with that is, like, most other products you're purchasing or buying in are not going to be ripping. That's the fun thing about Bitcoin as a commodity. Like, you can use it as money, but in a sense, they're using it as both money and a commodity. And so it's it can work with you or against you. But that's all I have for it. It's a good story, though, to kind of finish up on. Any thoughts as we head into the day with consensus to leave our audience with?
I don't think so. If y'all are interested in any of the talks, head on over to Consensus or CoinDesk. You can find a backlog of everything from the conference and also all of the Bitcoin mining stage content that we programmed, and we'll be moderating and emceeing throughout the day.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you guys next week. Peace.